All right, good morning, traders. Today is May 6, 2025. My name is John Kerrigan. I'm a lead instructor here at BYOB Trading. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody out there in podcast land, digital land, cyber land. Thank you. Please like and subscribe my content. I appreciate that. If you take the time to do that, that's all I ask. Again, thank you so much for finding the value in my content. I try to provide actionable content every day. Let's get down to it. All right, so my SPY pivot this morning, it doesn't remain. It changed to 564.45. Above it, I'm a bull. Below it, I'm a bear. SPY, Diamond Dow, QQQ, and FNGA or FNGB, all in daily uptrends. All of the Fab 5 made lower highs and lower lows, closing over bullish traps over their hooking 17 EMAs. SPY closed with a 2-hour uptrend and a 10-minute downtrend. Gold still in a daily uptrend. Gold made a higher high and a higher low, closing over a bearish trap over the 17 EMA. Silver still in a downtrend, made an inside day, closing under the bearish trap and under the 17 EMA. USO still in a downtrend, made a lower low and a lower high, closing under a bearish trap under the 17 EMA. UNG still in a daily downtrend, made a higher high and a higher low, closing over a bullish trap and over the 17 EMA. US dollar index still in a downtrend, closed near 99.81. SPY max pain 562, and a put to call ratio of 1.25 puts. That for each call that expires today at 4:15. Let me change this. This is lower. I can't change it. All right, I got to go to the other form. All right, let's go take a look at some charts. SPY 10-minute. All right, we got price action and the 3 EMA. That's the yellow line. Underneath the white line. Okay, that's the 8 EMA. Okay, so we have a 10-minute downtrend coming into the close. Looking for some continuation. Looks like in the overnight session, they already took it. All right, a little $4 drop right there. So there's SPY on the 2-hour, on the 10-minute chart. On the 2-hour chart. Okay, we left off yesterday. We had a 2-hour uptrend. If I put the pre-market on, it's definitely going to change. All right, put the pre-market on. We got a 2-hour downtrend currently. All right, on the daily chart for today, we got a daily chart. All right, daily chart we got yesterday, lower high, lower low. All right, but we closed over the bullish trap. See the 3 on top of the 8? That'd be a bullish trap right there. Over the rising 17. Okay, that's these red dots that turn to green dots. It's a bullish trap. Okay, we closed over the bullish trap, over the 17 EMA. Okay, if we look at it with the quad lines on here, you can see we got a higher low and a higher high, so we're in an uptrend. Okay, we're up over the midpoint. We're not in the upper third, so we're not bullish. We're not in the lower third, so we're not bearish. So we're just kind of in neutral land, all right? You move up, you give it up, that's neutral. You move down, you give it up, that's neutral. All right, so price action in the neutral land, coming into some resistance here, about 567.42 area, okay? Have a little problem through there. As you can see, it took us 3 weeks in this area. All right, it's 3 weeks of consolidation in this area. Probably going to take us a week or so to get through this as we grind away at overhead supply. All right, so there's the daily chart, all right, for SPY. Take a look at the 2-day chart. Okay, we look at the 2-day chart. 2-day chart, we have to take out this high to negate the downtrend. So 2-day chart, still in a downtrend. Daily chart, still in an uptrend, all right? Why? Because they made a higher low. Here's a high. They made a higher high. Okay, 2-day chart doesn't contain that. See, this high doesn't go through the 17. So we are still in a downtrend here on the 2-day chart. 2-day chart, downtrend. 1-day chart, uptrend. Weekly chart. Okay, weekly chart, we made lows. See the low below 17? Okay, we made a lower low. We took out this low, we took out that low, and we took out that low right there. And we took out this low way down here. Okay, so we made lower lows right there on the SPY on the weekly chart. Okay, so that puts us in a downtrend. All right, in order to negate the downtrend, we got to make a higher high. Either that or we got to create a lower high, create a higher low, and come back through and rip over it. All right, so there's the high that currently SPY has to take out in order to negate the downtrend. Currently, weekly is a downtrend. Daily, uptrend. All right, monthly still in an uptrend. Okay, because here's the low below the 17. Okay, price action right here. Okay, big tail. Huge rally back up. All right, so there's SPY on the monthly chart. All right, we're still in an uptrend because we haven't made a lower low. This would be the low to take out. They have not taken out that low. So monthly chart, uptrend. Weekly, still in a downtrend. Daily chart, back to an uptrend. So we'll see how long they can hold on to this. Hopefully we consolidate here, put in a nice shelf or launch pad to take off of, okay? So there's SPY on the daily chart. All right, let's take a look at the game plan. All right, and let's take a look over here. All right, for the game plan, SPY pivot this morning, 564.45. Below it, I'm a bear. Above it, I'm a bull. Green erases red, entry. Okay, right up over this area right through here. Pop through that resistance area right there. Over 565.40. Okay, red erases green. In other words, all of this bullish momentum that we took yesterday that took about 5 hours to move $1.50 right there. Okay, so all of that. Okay, we get underneath all of that. That's 562. All right, that would be my red erases green entry. All right, below 562. As you can see over here in the pre-market, we're well below 562. All right, so kind of sitting right here on support. Okay, we've got a big open gap below this. All right, if we get below this area right here, 558.50, I'd be looking to fill gap. Probably come on down to gap fill, which is going to be 554.66. If we get below that, then we're looking at 547. All right, I don't know if we get down to 547. I think there'll be enough support right here to hold us right at 553.70, right about there, 553.50. 553.50. There's some support right there. Probably can hold price up. All right. If we start filling gaps, that would be the location. That would be my target down there, 553.50. Okay, so there's the SPY game plan. I like this morning. I like 3 days till expiration, Friday expiration options. All right. I like 10 days till expiration, Friday options. I like them $5 to $20 out of the money. I also like 10-minute downtrends under VWAP, as well as 10-minute uptrends over VWAP. All right, it's quite possible that after hitting this open gap today, that we might wind up bouncing back to this area right here, which was our entry to come lower. So there's a probable bounce, maybe back to 562. We'll see how far they get. We'll have to take a look at the pre-market to see what they did with it. So I think we're in a consolidation period. Okay, I think we hit the 567.42 area, and I think now we're going to move down. I think we're going to make a move down. Let me get my arrows out. All right. Okay, I think we're going to make a move down. All right. In other words, a pullback. All right, maybe that 553.50 area, and then I think we move back up here. Okay. And then I think we come back down, and I think we create a W pattern. All right, and then we do a little half back and then a rip. All right, that's what I think we're going to do over the future week or whatever happens here. Okay, so we hit resistance. I think now we start to consolidate. under resistance and kind of chew away at overhead supply. And in the process of consolidation, there'll be some pullbacks. Okay, just looking for 553, 550 to hold. So looking for this area to kind of hang on to price action. Keep it up here in the upper quadrant of the move, all right, from that low that we made earlier, all right. So there's SPY on the 10-minute chart. Okay, 553. I'll draw out a bigger map a little bit. Heck, let's just go ahead and do it now. All right, so there's the 10. Here's a nice clean one. Let's put a line in at 553.50. Let's put another one in at 550. All right, and you can see, let's put a line in up here where we found resistance. Okay, which was about 560, about this area right here. Okay, so I'm looking for probably price action with the arrows. Pull back to this area here, and then back up, and then back down, probably down to here. Okay, probably going to test 550, 549, and then back up. All right, and then a little half back, and then a rip. All right, either that or they come back here, and then a rip. All right, we'll see what happens. All right, so there's SPY. That's what I'm looking for over the future for the month of May. All right, if we get past all of this, all right, we get over this resistance here, all right, and we'll address the rest later. Right now, this is what I'm pretty much concentrating on right now. See where they find the low. I think it's going to be maybe 550, maybe 563.50 right there. Okay, 553.60. Excuse me, 553.50. A little tongue-tied right there. Okay, there's SPY. All right, let's take a look at QQQ. Let's look at QQQ game plan. All right, it's pretty much the same as SPY. All right, I like 3 days till expiration, Friday options. I like 10 days till expiration, Friday options. I like them $5 to $15 out of the money because I got a small account. All right, I'm not going to get the performance that I would if I got a 0 DTE. All right, in the money option. All right, I would get much better performance out of that, but I would also be taking on more risk. Okay, you want more reward, you take on more risk. Okay, so taking on more risk that way. Okay, so I like to take on less risk and sacrifice just a little bit of performance there. Okay, so I like them $5 to $15 out of the money. Okay, you got bullish green erases red over 487.50. QQQ pivot is 486.05. Bearish red erases green underneath 484.70. You can see we're well underneath that right now, into this open gap area right here. All right, so I'm picturing a little bounce back and then come back down through. We'll see what happens this morning. All right, they might just go ahead and start filling the gap. That's a possibility. All right, so there's QQQ game plan. Let's look at QQQ on the daily chart. All right, QQQ on the daily chart. Again, just like SPY. All right, we got a lower high and a lower low, closing over a bullish trap over the hooking 17. See the red dots turning to green dots. That's the 17 EMA right there. Okay, that is the all-time high anchored VWAP. The pink line right there. You can see we were up over it. You spend 4 days over it, and you get a breakout. Okay, 4 to 5 days, look for a breakout over the all-time high anchored VWAP. Especially when you get a little grinder box like this, you get a nice little breakout. Okay, so there's QQQ on the daily chart. Again, we're in an uptrend, got a higher low and a higher high, so we're in an uptrend. Weekly chart, still in a downtrend. They have to take out this high to negate the downtrend. Notice the weekly chart took out this low, this low, this low, and that low right there, okay? Took out all those lows. Okay, so that's what put it in a downtrend. All right, so in order to negate the downtrend, we have to make a higher high. First high to come to, right here. Okay, all the way back up here, that last high, in order to negate this downtrend. Okay, so there's Weekly chart, still in a downtrend. Monthly chart, just like SPY, put in a nice, beautiful candle right there. All right, still in an uptrend. Okay, in order to negate their uptrend, they got to come all the way back here and take out that low. All right, so there's QQQ on the monthly chart, still in an uptrend. Weekly, downtrend. Daily chart, uptrend. Higher low, higher high. All right, see there's a high. They made a higher high. So that puts them in an uptrend. So there's QQQ. Let's take a look at IWM. This is the Russell 2000. All right, lower high, lower low, closing over the bullish trap over the 17 EMA. Underneath the all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay, that's this pink line right there. Okay, no longer in the lower third, so it's just neutral. All right, they just broke out yesterday or a couple days ago. Okay, so there's IWM. Neutral, still in a downtrend. See this high over here? That's the first high you come to that broke through the 17. They haven't taken out that high. They made a lower low here, and they made a little higher high here, but this high did not poke through the 17. Okay, so IWM still in a downtrend. Remember, it's just a label. All right. Okay, so price action still in a downtrend there for IWM. Again, on the weekly chart for IWM, let's take a look at it. Okay, they have to take out this high right here. All right, they took out this low, this low, this low, this low, this low. All those lows there, they made lower lows, so they're in a downtrend. And in order to negate that downtrend, they got to make a higher high. First high you come to, right up here. Okay, so a lot of work to be done to take out that high. So there's IWM on the weekly chart, still in a downtrend. On the monthly chart, okay, on the monthly chart, first low, well, you could call that a low. They poked through right there. Monthly chart is in a downtrend. So we got a little low right here. They didn't close down there, but they sure got price down there. And we create a lower low. So monthly chart on IWM, still in a downtrend. All right, until they take out this high up here, which is the first high you come to. Okay, if you're in a downtrend, it's the first high you come to. So monthly chart, downtrend. Weekly chart, downtrend. Daily chart, downtrend. All right, so Russell 2000 in a downtrend. Let's take a look at Diamond Dow. Look at it on the daily chart right here, price action. Looking like an outside day, if you ask me. Let me see what we got here. That's a higher high. And the low here is 410.33. The low here, 410.46. Okay, so higher high, higher low, closing over the bullish trap. Okay, over the 17 EMA. Okay, see the bullish trap? That's the 3 EMA on top of the 8. All right, so we're on top of that. Notice we closed up here at the top of the body because it's a green candle. Closed over the 17. All right, that's these red dots turning to green. Okay, price action underneath, actually above the downtrend line. Okay, Diamond Dow underneath the all-time high anchored VWAP. Not in the lower third, not in the upper third. They made a high here. They made a higher high. Okay, so that puts Diamond Dow daily in an uptrend. All right, in order to negate the uptrend, they got to come down here and take out the low. Okay, so this daily chart for Diamond Dow is an uptrend. Let's take a look at the 2-day chart. 2-day chart still in a downtrend. They got to take out that high right there. Okay, so still in a downtrend. 3-day, still in a downtrend. Weekly chart, still in a downtrend. Monthly chart, well, excuse me, monthly chart, we are still in an uptrend for Diamond Dow. All right, let's take a look at FNGA. All right, FNGA on the daily chart, right here, price action. Got a lower high and a lower low, closing over the bullish trap, over the rising 17, or the hooking 17. Again, that's the red dots that turn to green. Okay, not in the lower third, not in the upper third. So they're just neutral right here at the midpoint. underneath this all-time high anchored VWAP, breaking this downtrend line right here. So there's FNGA, just neutral. Let's take a look at technicals. Actually, let's take a look at the weekly and monthly. 2-day, still in a downtrend. They have to take out this high. 3-day, still in a downtrend. Weekly, still in a downtrend. They have to take out that high right there. Monthly chart, okay, still in an uptrend. Okay, notice they have to take out, well, I take that back. We got a low right here. They made a lower low. So monthly chart still is in a downtrend. So FNGA or FNGB, all right, still actually in a downtrend because they took out this low right there. So this FNGA or FNGB. They're going to change their name again. All right, so there's the monthly for that. Let's take a look at our technicals. All right, for T2122, we spent the day mostly in the overbought zone, and we did jump out of the buy zone. We popped down in here and climbed back into the overbought zone. Ended up closing inside the buy zone. Never even entered the buyer's chop zone here. So nice work for T2122. Let's move these over here. Let's go take a look at T2123. T2123, 15-minute chart. Yesterday's price action, you can see green right out of the gate. Okay, and an early Cinco de Mayo's. All right, little celebration going on there. So green up until the end of the day after they double topped. All right, and then a fade out. All right, so maybe they find support. Price action, okay, up over this hooking 200 SMA. And it's entirely possible that they pull back to this hooking 200 SMA. All right, create a higher low and hopefully J hook off of it back up there to the upside. Support, where would they find support? There would be some support hopefully right through, well, right through about there. All right, about 561, 531, 941, right through there. Hopefully they would find some support there. There's not much, all right, but they do have the hooking 200 to help them out. We'll see what happens. If not, we're coming down to that shelf of candles right through here, along with that pullback right there. So that would be right about this area, which puts it a little bit lower. So we could find ourselves with a deep pullback today, coming back to this hooking 200 SMA on the 15-minute chart or over the next 2 days. Okay, big hooking. All right, so that would be filling this bullish gap, and that would be filling this bullish gap in order to get down there. All right, we'll see how far they want to take it. T2123. Okay, same chart, but on a 3-bar, 3 more green candle bars. Nice work there. Still underneath this 200 SMA. Still underneath 2 prior all-time highs and the all-time high here. Okay, showing a mini bull flag that's kind of breaking out. Okay, all in all, we still got a big bear flag right through here. Still got some bearish traps that haven't been filled. Okay, but they have made, the good news is they have made a higher high. That was the high I wanted to see them take out. Actually, the next step is I'd like to see them fill the gap right up here. Okay, fill that gap. That would be nice. So they came right up there to about gap fill. You can see yesterday near it, and they lost it right there. Okay, and they started drinking tequila shots. All right, so there's T2123. All right, FNGA price action. You can see yesterday a little bit of selling. This is the 5th. All right, and then a little bit of consolidation right here. And now we're getting some more selling. So kind of pull back to this 200 SMA. The good news is still got a bullish gap that hasn't been filled, although that might get filled today. We'll see what happens. All right, they're holding the higher ground. That's bullish. All right, consolidation over prior consolidation, also bullish. Okay, see, here's some consolidation. Here's prior consolidation. Okay, that's bullish. All right, we're up over the all-time high anchored VWAP according to this chart. Okay, so you can see there's the all-time high anchored VWAP here on the 15-minute chart. FNGA, FNGB. All right, price action right through here. We're up over that. Don't know how long we can stay up there. I would expect a retest of this area to see if we can break out. Okay, after we shot up through, I would look for them to retest it and then shoot through. So maybe a retest of the all-time high anchored VWAP and the hooking 200 on the 15-minute hooking 200 SMA on the 15-minute chart. All right, let's go take a look at a few sectors. We'll start off with XLE. We'll look at it on the daily chart, and we'll look at it with the quad lines. Okay, XLE still in bearish territory. Okay, they're in the lower third down here. Okay, you can see down here they haven't made a higher high, so still in a downtrend. Okay, so here's a high. All right, they got to take out that high. Actually, they got to take out this high now. Okay, here's a pullback. Take out that high. They could have an uptrend. Right now, still in a downtrend. So there's XLE, bearish, still in a downtrend. You can see them underneath. This is the quad lines. They're in the lower third. Underneath the all-time high, or that's a 12-month high anchored VWAP. Underneath downtrend line 1, downtrend line 2, price action all the way down here in the lower third. Okay, let's take a look at USO. USO down here, quadrant 1, that's bearish. USO making a lower high, lower low, closing under the trap, under the 17, under, this is a 3-year high anchored VWAP right there, underneath that. Underneath the midpoint, okay, you can see it's making lower highs and lower lows. See, there's a high, all right, there's a lower high. There's a low, then there's a lower low. So they're in a downtrend. They're down here in quadrant 1. USO, bearish, and in a downtrend. Let's take a look at UNG. All right, UNG making, here's a low. They made a lower low. They're in downtrends, lower highs and lower lows. That puts them in a downtrend. Just not moving down right now. Looking like a 5-day pullback, 7-day pullback. Anyway, still underneath the downtrend line, all right? And that's acquired by pinning the two tops together and drawing a line across the top. Okay, so there's UNG on the daily chart. Okay, price action for yesterday is a higher high and a higher low, closing over the bullish trap over the 17. That's these red dots turning to green right here. Okay, over this 12-month high anchored VWAP right here. That's the pink line. Okay, that's the 12-month high anchored VWAP. Kind of showing a setup for a head and shoulders. Got a little left shoulder. Maybe we're forming a right shoulder. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Okay, they had a head and shoulders here. Notice the right arm extended down to where the left arm left off. See the head and shoulders? Head there, left shoulder, right shoulder. This could be the head of a bigger picture monthly chart, okay, or monthly breakdown. Anyways, got a possible left shoulder there, and possible formation of a right shoulder here. We'll see. All right, so there's UNG on the daily chart. All right, still in a downtrend, neutral, not in the lower third, not in the upper third. Okay, so UNG just neutral at this time, but still in a downtrend. Let's take a look at precious metals, GLD. All right, precious metals. Here's a low, there's a higher low, there's a high, there's a higher high. They're in an uptrend. They're up here in quadrant 4, they're bullish, GLD. Price action for yesterday, higher low, higher high, closing over the all-time high anchored VWAP, closing over the bearish trap. See the 3 is underneath the 8 here, closing over the bearish trap, and over the 17. That's these green dots that turn to red and then back to green. Okay, gold, okay, in an uptrend. All right, let's take a look at SLV. All right, SLV inside day, lower high, higher low. closing inside a bearish trap under the 17 EMA. See the red dot? We're underneath it, so we're underneath the 17 EMA. Price action is in the upper third, so that's bullish. All right, still in a downtrend, okay, because they made a lower low. See the low here? They took out that low, they took out that low, and that low. They made a lower low. So they're in a downtrend. So in order to negate the downtrend, they got to make a higher high. Well, the first high you come to is way back here. All right, they still haven't taken that high out. Right now, they're showing a bull flag over this 6-month high anchored VWAP. Okay, so now the next high that they need to take out is this high right here. If they manage to take out that high, they will negate the downtrend. Currently in a downtrend, but a nice deep pullback here on SLV. All right, let's look at a few sectors. SMH, lower high, lower low, closing over the trap, over the 17. Just neutral right here, not in the lower third, not in the upper third. Okay, under the all-time high anchored VWAP, under the downtrend line. Again, just neutral, but in an uptrend because they made a higher low and a higher high. See, there's the last high poking through the 17. They made a higher high, so that puts them in an uptrend. All right, so there's SMH. That's looking pretty good. Like to see them over the midpoint. All right, let's take a look at Big Brother to the SMH. That's the XLK. A little leaner, a little meaner, a little stronger. Notice SMH down here in quadrant 2, XLK up here in quadrant 3. All right, lower high, higher low, closing over a bullish trap over the 17 EMA, over the all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay, XLK uptrend, made a higher low. Here's a low, there's a higher low. There's a high, they made a higher high. So they're in an uptrend and just neutral. Notice they are knocking on the door of the upper third. Okay, so they're ready to go. All right, they're just looking for the green light. All right, so there's XLK. Neutral, knocking on the door to the bullish sector. Bullish upper third. All right, so there's XLK. Let's take a look at XLF. XLF, lower high, lower low, closing over a bullish trap over the 17. Right here, that's the red dots that turn to green. Okay, over the, this is the all-time high anchored VWAP, that's the pink line. Okay, in the upper third, so that's bullish, making higher lows. All right, okay, got a low here, made a higher low. Okay, there's a high, and then a pullback, and there's a higher high. So that's in an uptrend. So we got XLK in an uptrend and bullish. Well, knocking on the bullish door. Okay, XLF bullish and in an uptrend. Let's go take a look at IYT. Okay, IYT is, it's in an uptrend, just barely. All right, just barely. Okay, because they took their. All right, so here's price action moves up, all right, and then pulls back, and then moves up, and then pulls back, all right, and now see this? It's weak. It's a really weak uptrend, okay? And then they move up here, and they took out this high. So, uptrend on the transports. Not a strong uptrend, okay? I mean, the bar was set really low, okay? So they made a higher high. Okay, so that puts them in an uptrend. They're no longer in the lower third. All right. Okay, see how there's the high. They made a higher high over the 17. Okay, not really a nice pullback, but there it is. It's a weak uptrend. All right, for the transports, making the higher high. Got the uptrend. No longer in the lower third, so they're just neutral. All right. Let's back out of the quad line so you can see what's going on. Okay, see we're underneath our all-time high anchored VWAP. Okay, there's the high. They made a higher high. All right, that puts them in an uptrend, and they're no longer in the lower third, so that just puts them in neutral. All right, so they're in an uptrend now. All right, so we got transports in an uptrend. Financials in an uptrend. Technology and semiconductors in an uptrend. All right, we've got T2123. All right, is made a higher high. All right, that's nice, right there. That's looking good. Not a very strong higher high. Okay, on the 15-minute chart, definitely made higher highs. Okay, see there's an up, pull back, and an up. On the 3-bar chart, not really made any higher highs yet. I mean, it's the first high you come to over here that pokes through the 17, the north side of the 17, is that green dot right there. So not really any higher highs yet on T2123 3-bar chart. On the 15-minute chart, you kind of got to stretch it, but you can see we're making some higher highs here. See the high there, pull back, higher highs. On the 15-minute chart, yes, but on the 3-bar, we're not feeling it. Okay, it's not there yet. It's got to come all the way back up here. Okay, so still a lot of work to be done as far as the market goes. This is a broad picture of the market. Okay, let's take a look at FNGA. All right, FNGB. Okay, on the smaller time frame, okay, we're getting higher lows and higher highs. A nice uptrend working there. Okay, but let's go out to a daily time frame and see what's going on right there. FNGA. Okay, because this is really the one that's going to move the indexes. All right, you could have in the S&P 500, you could have 480 stocks, securities in the S&P 500 moving down. And let me just say, if these 10 securities inside the FNGA, they're so heavily weighted, they're so heavily underpinned in funds, in growth funds, okay, that if these guys continue to move up, they can jerk the whole index up, even though everything is melting down with the 480 stocks, 480 securities. So let's look at this FNGA. This is really what's going to move the securities. Okay, it's making higher lows, it's making higher highs. Okay, it would be nice. That was a really low bar to set. It would be nice to see price take out that high right there, which pretty much equals the consolidation, all right, that we saw in SPY, which is the 567.42 area. Okay, if we could take that out right there, okay, we might have a chance of making a new all-time high, all right, or at least making a stab at the highs, all right, but we got to get over this. See that peak right there? Now this one was a very low bar to set. We broke the high there. That was nice. Okay, but price coming up over this, that would mean a lot. If we got up on top of that, in other words, the all-time high anchored VWAP and consolidated up there, that would be huge. All right, that would be huge if we got up here and held over the all-time high anchored VWAP. Not quite there yet, all right, but I'm not disappointed in what I see, all right, and things are still looking good, all right. So there's FNGA. Let's take a look at the economic package. All right, dollar still in a downtrend, lower highs, lower lows. Currently in a bear flag, consolidating underneath major resistance. Well, actually, minor support. Okay, we broke through major support. Now it becomes minor resistance. We're underneath. All right, see price action's caught underneath what was major support and has now become minor resistance. All right, so we're consolidating in a bear flag underneath it. So I'm looking forward to another move lower. All right, if we could just get some news on the tariffs, all right, and that would provide some certainty to the market. I can really see price action for the index is really moving up. Currently in a downtrend, lower highs. See, there's a high. We made a lower high and lower lows. All right, again, a lower high. There's highs up here. lower high, and lower low right here. Here's a low. Notice we made a lower low, so we're in a downtrend. Okay, that's nice. All right, let's take a look at max pain for today. Max pain is 562. That's for the puts and calls that expire today in the SPY. And we got a put to call ratio of about 1.25 put for each call. Okay, so not much of a put squeeze on the table there. All right, so there's price action for max pain for SPY. Economic calendar. The main event's Wednesday. All right, main event is Wednesday for this week on the economic calendar. 2 p.m. Okay, FOMC announcement. A little presser afterwards. Today we're going to get international trading goods at 8:30. All right, and really the rest of the day is a light day. Not much going on. All right, the main event's Wednesday, and we got a petroleum report, 2 o'clock FOMC announcement, and I don't think there's much coming out of this FOMC announcement. I got to tell you, if I'm Mr. Powell, I don't even know what to do till Mr. President figures out if he's going to do tariffs or if he's not going to do tariffs. Is he going to delay tariffs? Is he just going to talk about tariffs? Is he going to call people bad names? Who knows? Nobody knows what's going on. So he's just got to deal with what's in front of him. All right? That's all he can do is just deal with the data in front of him. Okay? Other than that, there's nothing he can do. All right? We get tariffs. You know that's going to cause inflation. All right? You add a tariff on anything we buy, that means we pay the tariff. They don't pay the tariff. We pay the tariff. That's the thing about tariffs. We're paying the tariff, not them. All right? It just makes it harder for them to sell their goods over here. So then tariffs, in reality, suck. Okay? All right? But he's trying to get them to remove their tariffs. All right? So we can have our job growth. All right? And I get it. And it might work and it might fail. But we'll see what happens. In the meantime, he's asking us to pay the tariff because we're the ones that really pay the tariff with the extra high price that we use, that we sell, when we purchase the goods. Right? Now, if we don't purchase them, they'll stop shipping them. That's the bottom line. If they can't sell them and make a profit, they'll stop shipping them. And eventually, maybe we'll come up with a replacement. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know. All right? But anyways, there you go. All right? Big thing is FOMC. All right? All he can do is deal with the data in front of him. So I don't think there's going to be much changing. Everything is looking good so far. So far. Okay? Thursday. Jobless claims 8:30. Productivity in charts 8:30. Wholesale inventories 10. A natural gas report at 10:30. Light day afterwards. Friday. Rig count at 1 o'clock. Everybody else just a Fed speaker, but none of them are Mr. Powell. So really light week, okay, except for 2 p.m. on Wednesday. And I don't think there's anything coming out new there. There's no economic data that says we're failing and falling apart. All right, so that's that there. Earnings. Okay, really light week for earnings too, if you ask me. AMD is going to report tonight, all right, 160 billion. Arista Networks, 114 billion, also tonight. Ferrari's going to report this morning, and Duke Energy is going to report this morning. All right, tomorrow, what do we got? Novo Nordisk, $309 billion. They're going to report tomorrow morning. Uber, 178 billion tomorrow morning. Walt Disney, 167 billion tomorrow morning. Seems like Walt Disney just stays at the same spot. 167 billion. I think they've been there for 3 years. All right. ARM Holdings, 128 billion. That's tomorrow night. Mercado Libre, 115 billion tomorrow night. AppLovin, 104 billion also tomorrow night. Thursday. You can see there's not too many really big names here. Shopify tomorrow, Thursday morning, 127 billion. And Budweiser, 118 billion Thursday morning. ConocoPhillips, 111 billion Thursday morning. Friday, we got Enbridge, 101 billion. They're going to report Friday morning. Everybody else, nobody here is really going to move the markets. Nobody. All right, not like yesterday. All right, all the big cap earnings are in. They're the ones that are going to move the markets. They might move their sectors around. All right, you got like SMH. Be nice to see them put some good numbers up from AMD, but all in all, not much going on. All right. Wednesday, like I said, there's some more pharmaceuticals, and here we got some retail and more retail right here, and there's energy, ConocoPhillips. All right, traders, that's it for me. All right, I will take a 30-minute break here, and then we'll come back and open up the markets here in about 45 minutes. All right, put your questions in there. I'll do my best to get you an answer on those. Thank you.